Hello there, YouTube. We are back with another deck profile for you guys. For those of you who are watching this video live on Monday, thank you for being a member. We truly do appreciate you guys, and we wouldn't be here without your support. For those of you who are watching this profile live on Wednesday, do consider becoming a member. Small way to show the appreciation to the channel. I'll drop a link down in the video description below on how to become a member. Right now, you get early access to our deck profiles every week, as well as the deck check series that goes live to the public on Friday. We're also trying to roll out more things in the near future, so be on the lookout for it, particularly since we have our Twitches all set up now. We're trying to do more weekly streams with you guys, so gonna try to incorporate you members on our Twitches and seeing what we can do, so be on the lookout for that. But today's deck profile is one that was voted on a lot of our members in the community who wanted to see Royal Knights. Royal Knights is definitely a very, very strong deck in today's format. It's also a deck that I've had a lot of fun playing and getting more reps in and learning how the deck works itself. It wasn't a deck that I had anticipated enjoying as much as I did, but I do feel like playing against a lot of it at locals, learning about the archetype, and also the dialogue and the toolboxy nature that it presents, I think really hooked me. I do miss the dialogue, like the back and forth of Digimon at times, and this deck really brought it back for me. You know, it really helps me just kind of sit there, think about my counterplays, think about how I want to respond to opponent's board state, and it has a lot of tools that is at its disposal to really adapt to what you're playing against. So that's why I really liked it. So shout out to my fellow Royal Knights players, Justin, who has taught me a lot playing against him at locals, and watching him grow as a player and growing with him has been amazing. Nate as well, same thing, buddy. You know, you've taught me a lot over the years that we've been playing together. And then Magna Timmon too, a fellow viewer and also fellow Royal Knights player. I've played against him in a couple times at Eagles, and also learned a couple things from him too. So shout out to all of you guys. Shout out to the community at Eagles too. But you know, it's a really fun deck. Let me know what you guys think of my build down in the video description below. Hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already and you're enjoying the content. And without further ado, let's hop right into the profile. So this is a pretty easy start for Idrisil. No other egg you can run in this deck. No reason. There's just nothing else you run. The inheritable is something to keep in mind when an option card with the Royal Knights trait is played. In the battle area, you gain 1 memory, so helps makes your option cards a little bit more cost effective, which is really nice. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go over sort of cards that are more standard in terms of ratios, and then we're going to move into the actual Royal Knights itself. So these cards are going to be things like, for example, the brand new Cool Boy that we got in BT20. So Cool Boy is one hell of a card for this deck. It does so much in terms of consistency. It gains you memory. It makes your play so much more effective. It's essentially another Royal Knight tucked into Idrisil when you have Cool Boy out on board. Cool Boy is definitely one of those cards that I would say you try to mulligan for when you're deciding whether to keep your starting hand or not. If you have a Cool Boy, it's never a bad play to say, like, turn 1, whether you're turn player or starting second, to just slam a Cool Boy down. Like, it's never a wrong play because it gives you so much gas as the game progresses, right? So getting your Cool Boys out on board is a priority, and I'd say definitely one of those cards you try to mulligan for if you have the opportunity to do so. Another thing that I usually tend to forget, at least when I was first playing the deck, is that not only does it gives you the memory and the draw power with the consistency, if your Royal Knights gets removed, you can go ahead and play an Omeka from hand without paying the play cost. So the reason that's really good is that, you know, before with Royal Knights, you typically struggled with decks that could remove your Royal Knights effectively, right? Which is, for example, cards like Zudo Ace, Mirage when it was back in its heyday. Being able to get rid of your single source Royal Knights was really annoying because it sets you back like a turn or two. Now being able to play out on Omekamon not only gives you a little bit more aggression, but also helps you get your Knights back under your Idrisil so that you can continue with the game plan and keep the tempo going. So speaking of Omekamon, we do run 4 of the new BT20 Omekamon and 2 of the old BT13 Omekamon. So BT20 Omeka is truly goated for this deck, right? a 5 cost blocker that when deleted gets kind of slurped under Idrisil is pretty good. But what's really key is that on play, if you have 1 or less security, you can warp into an Omni X without paying the play cost. And this card also gets treated as an X antibody card. So not like X antibody trait, but like X antibody itself, right? Which is what helps Omni X proc on some of its additional effects. So this card is really, really good for this deck. And I think this plus Cool Boy really like bumped this deck up. Even without talking about Omni X, these 2 cards alone really make, I would say, the Royal Knights deck so much better, right? So you have to run this guy at a 4 of. I used to run BT13 Omeka at a 2 of, or at a 3 of. I'm now running him at a 2 of, mainly because there are some other tech choices that I wanted to slot in. And I felt like, you know, yes, it's a 4 cost. You get to draw off of the on play. There's so many times where he just doesn't die for me that I'm like, okay, brother. I don't mind having him at a 2 of. I see it enough. I cycle enough where I see it. I'm able to get the benefit out of it. But sometimes at like late game, like playing it out for a 4 of just feels kind of bad. Right? Because you don't really get any additional benefit from playing him. So I felt like a 2 of was okay. But definitely you need 4 of this new Omekamon here. And then moving on to the Royal Knight options, we do a 4-4 split of Royal Knights of the Purge and 4 of the Last Guardian here. So Purge, I think everybody knows what it does right now. It's a 6 cost drop to essentially draw 1 and tuck something under Idrisil. As we stated earlier, because of Idrisil's effect, you essentially can be playing this for, you know, sometimes a 4 to 5, but more often than not in the late game, Purge becomes a 3 cost option to draw and tuck, which is pretty good. And then the delay effect to bring out a Royal Knight that has Rush is also really, really good when paired with a few other cards that we're going to be talking about in a little bit. The only thing to remember, which is mainly for me because I'm a monkey brain and tend to forget it, is that you don't get your on plays when you delay effect. So you delay, you get Rush, but you don't get the on play. So just something to keep in mind. But this is still such a really, really good card for the deck. Being able to just help expedite your game plan and get things under Idrisil is really nice. Last Guardian is a new card that we got in BT20 that is absolutely cracked when paired with Omni X. Being able to cycle 3, pick up a Cool Boy and a Royal Knight is also really, really good value. Again, with Idrisil, more often than not, this card is not costing the full 4. It's costing anywhere between like 2, sometimes even a 1 cost. So really, really good cycle. Picks up potentially 2 pieces. Delay effect to keep your Omni on board. Again, really, really good, right? Because you can do the warp play with Omeka as a Royal Knight. It will get tucked. If you want to prevent that to keep it out on board, you can proc a Last Guardian if you have it. Sometimes there'll be instances where you just hard play an Omni X and say, look, I'm going to bot deck something, raid into something, and you want to keep that guy on board for extra aggression next turn. Last Guardian allows you to string over some combo plays that give you a little bit more adaptability and a little bit more flexibility with, again, your Omni X antibodies. So definitely a 4-0 for sure. And I think that kind of rounds out the like kind of generic Royal Knight stuff. Here's where we can get into the little mix of like different ratios for your Digimon and whatnot. So now let's start talking Royal Knights. So we start off with 4 of the BT13 Magna. Again, pretty standard for most Royal Knights decks. No reason not to. It's a cheap level or cheap 7 cost to play early game. The standard Royal Knights play, right, is that you tuck your Drazzle and then play this guy out for 2 pass turn. Very, very solid. Get something underneath Idrisil right away. When it leaves play, you draw 1. And also 2, I will say this is another card that you try to mulligan for if possible, you know, because again, it's such a good tempo play to start. You can also bring this guy out with like Lord Nightmon, for example, Leopardmon. So a lot of ways you can bring out this blocker that, again, helps with consistency, is a blocker, and is overall very, very standard, solid play for Royal Knights. Then we move on to some more earlier game Royal Knights in Dynasmon, Lord Nightmon, and Leopardmon. So we run 2 Dynast, 2 Lord Knight, 1 Leopard. So Dynas is really good, right? Because again, it's early cycle, it's early consistency with your Idrisils. You know, like if you turn 2, right, and you've got 3 Idrisils in your stack, this essentially is a 3-cost searcher. Not bad, right? You get to pick up 2 pieces. You do set up your trash potentially, depending on what you see. But a lot of times, like Dynas and Magnamon are very good, like kind of pair early game plays that you can use. Like I said earlier, Lord Nightmon is really, really good for being able to play out, bring back a Magnamon from trash if your opponent deleted it or you blocked with it. Can also play out, for example, Omeka and this Omeka here too. So depending on the situation, right? Very sneaky place where you can Lord Knight, bring out Omeka. If you're at 1 or less security, if you want to warp, you can warp. So very, very good card here. Also has a nice redirect where you can redirect into a Royal Knights trait, which again is good defensive options and defensive capabilities for this deck. Leopard is another. I teched it in. A lot of decks that I've seen actually don't run Leopard. But I do like it as a one of, mainly because you can pull off some sneaky plays with, you know, playing a Leopard and then for a reduced cost of 4, playing a Magnamon for 3. Because you played a Digimon via effect off a Leopard, they will all get blocker for the turn. This is also something that you can pair with the BT13 Omni play, where maybe you can't go for game, but you set up a huge like wall of or army of Royal Knights all with blocker that your opponent just has to deal with. So I think a very, very nice like one of. I think more than it has felt a little clunky. It hasn't felt great, so I don't think more than one is good. I'd say like a one of is good for, again, that sort of adaptability and that nice flex defensive option. And again too, like worst case scenario, it's a good early game like Royal Knight to just play out for like 3 or 4 past turn. If it stays on, it's another source under Idrisil. So I do like Leopard. I will play around more with it to see if it actually warrants the spot, but for now I am running it at a one of. And then sort of the Jess Genku package is another one that I will like to highlight here too. BT20 Jessmon, really, really good. I think better for Royal Knights than it was for its own deck, unfortunately. But on play, you get to play out a token. I believe it's a 6k DP, reboot, blocker, and decoy, which is pretty darn good. And then if you play out a Digimon, which the token is a Digimon, you get to pop an AK body or less. So again, a really, really good card for early game aggression. You get to play the Jessmon out, you play out a token, you get 2 bodies out on board, you have a blocker. What's also nice about that blocker is that as decoy, if they try to delete Jessmon or get rid of it, you can just decoy the blocker, goes away, and then this hopefully will live to get tucked under Idrisil later on. And the token will end up staying on board. So it's just an extra body to provide defense. You can also just swing the next turn if it ends up staying there. So good for some early board establishment, board control, and aggression. So Jess is pretty good. I do like it at a 2 of. Genku is one that I have been messing around with for a little bit. At first, I ran him at 2. Then I cut him out completely. Then put him back to 1. And then more recently in testing, I've actually liked it at 3. I think initially at first I kind of fell under the trap of, you know, he did the thing, he did the Genku thing, he brought out something, but then it's like, now what, right? Because he brings something out and you're kind of like, okay, cool. Now they dealt with both bodies and now I'm like 2 turns behind. So that's why it felt bad initially for me, but I think you do have to be a little bit careful with when you play Genku, but if played in the right time, in the right way, he provides actually a lot of gas and a lot of advantage for you because he is a blocker. So that's also that's strong straight out the gate. And then you can go ahead and play anything out of your Idrisil sources without paying the cost. And the key thing to that, compared to Purge, where you don't get your on plays, with Genku, you do get your on plays. So for example, you can Genku, bring out a Dynas, bring out a Lord Knight, bring out a Magna, right? Whatever you want to do. You can even bring out Omni X for that matter. So you can Genku, bring out Omni X, do Omni X shenanigans, and then have a big board, multiple blockers, something can swing with Rush. So again, really good, I guess, wideboarding potential, if you want to call it that way. Also helps you just respond. right? It helps you respond to certain board states and utilize your Royal Knights a little bit more effectively. So I find that he's more of like a toolboxy play that can bring a lot of value if used correctly, but if mistimed or used in the wrong way, can definitely hurt you a lot more than you would like, because again, you lose multiple Royal Knights and now your plays are a lot less efficient. So I think Genku is something that you have to practice a little bit more with to use effectively, but when used in the right way, really, really good card. And we do run the Gallantmon package that a lot of folks are falling in love with to good reason. So we run two, sorry for the glare a little bit here. So we run two of the Gallantmon X Antibody here from EX8. Then we run two of the BT13 Gallantmon and then one Medieval Gallant. So Gallantmon X is a Royal Knight. It's really, really good when you pair it with the Purge option, mainly because there's no on play for him, right? So no on play, you don't really get much benefit there by just playing him out. But if you tuck him with your initial Purge play, then crack delay to bring him out, what you can do is you swing. If nothing gets deleted, if you time it correctly, you restand, trash top card of security, and can go again. Even if he dies on the third check, that's 3 checks that you've done and put a lot of pressure on your opponent to deal with it, right? Because now BT13 Omni only needs like 2 or 3 bodies to go for game, as opposed to needing a whole wide board of things, right? So this is really good for that aggression that it presents with Royal Knights of the Purge. So otherwise, kind of a dead card because, like I said, there's no on play. But when paired with Purge, really, really good. Rush Gallant here, I used to run him at a 1 of, but again, I bumped him up to 2 because it is good aggression. Being able to say, look, like I'll play this out for, you know, anywhere between 2 to 3 with Cool Boy. Sometimes it's a free cost. You don't have anything on the field. This is even reduced further with the trash. So can get in some nice aggression there. You get to pop some bodies when you on play and swing. So I think just again, good for some early aggression, some chip damage, and some board control. So I think 2 of is a pretty sweet spot for it. Medieval Gallant is one that in JP, I've seen a lot of folks actually run at a 4 of. I wish I could run it at a 4 of. I have the 4. I just don't know where I would slot them in because for me, deck space is a little tight. Mainly because I am running like a little bit more of a toolboxy spread. I've seen people cut Leopard. I've seen people cut some Lord Knights and some Genkus here and there. So I think there's definitely some variety to it. I still think Medieval is a really good card. You know, being able to get rid of small floodgates and lower level Digimon is always really helpful. So if I could bump him up to even like a 2 or 3, I definitely would. I just don't know where I would find room for it. But yeah, no, I mean, I think another reason that I've wanted to maximize my other pieces is that the win con for Royal Knights is still the same, right? It's either you get some chip damage in with these guys and go Omni X multiple times, or you go BT13 Omni, get all your boys out in the field, and go Unga Boonga, right? So if I can expedite that and get as much consistency with that game plan, I'm trying to. Medieval, unfortunately, is a Vortex Warrior, but not a Royal Knight. So he doesn't fit the archetype. So which is why I'm a little less like inclined to say, yeah, I got to bump him up to 4. But again, he's such a good card that if I can bump him up to 2 or 3, I definitely would. And then in terms of some high-end ace cards, we're running 2 of the Gallant Crimson mode. Again, another good option. Like if you're set to 3 memory, it is expensive, but if they've got a bunch of annoying floodgates on the field, you just drop a Crimson mode, deal with their board, and kind of call it a day. You do float a lot of level 6s that are red with your Gallants, your Jess, and your Ganks. Medieval as well. So if they're out on the field and your opponent isn't wary of this, you go ahead, Gallant Ace, wipe their board more often than not, and you have a body here that potentially will be swinging for a check, trashing security, and again, helps you get more aggression going. So definitely a good card, particularly in the late game for some additional board control once you have these Royal Knights established. I think Purple Hybrid also was a reason a lot of folks were running this card because their trashes were huge. Being able to utilize that to say, look, will trash multiple security cards is also really nice. But I think here, it's more of a defensive option nowadays that Purple Hybrid is going to be seeing less and less play. We run 2 Just GX, and then we run 3 of the new Oryuken Ace. So Just GX, again, very nice because you do float a lot of red Royal Knights as well as black level Knights in Genku and Lord Nightmon. So being able to blast Evo into a Just GX, tuck a Royal Knight underneath the blast Evo to pop something, again, is really, really good. On play too, if it gets brought out, for example, either via Purge or Royal Knights or BT13 Omni, you can go ahead and do multiple checks. So it does do at least 2 checks here, which is also not bad. So I think it's a good defensive option. Ironically, similar to BT20 Jess, probably not as great in its own tribal deck, better in like other decks. For example, like Royal Knights, Magnamon X, but still a really, really good defensive but also aggressive option too. Oryuken Ace is honestly one of the best cards for this deck. It's such a good card in general, but being a 9-drop, you can reduce cost with Yggdrasils and your sources and oftentimes play them out for like free. You play it out for free, something gets blanketed 15k DP minus until the end of your opponent's turn is really nasty. It's perfect for dealing with decks like Magnamon X Antibody, Gallantmon, where they basically are like, their immunity is gone, their DP buffs are gone, starter turn, there's no way for them to respond, they're just dead because Oryuken said you have a blanket effect, right? Another thing that I've had actually come up more often than not is playing out a Leopard and then reducing cost by 4 to play this out for 5 is also not a bad play. You get 2 big blockers out on board, you get the 15k DP reduction, and on top of that too, if security is checked, you gain the 3 memory back. So really, really nice and versatile card. It's such a good, like almost like an option card for Royal Knights here. So I used to run him at like a 2 of. TJ definitely convinced me to run him at a 3 of. And the more we talked about it, the more I thought about it, it does make sense to run him at a 3 of for sure. So definitely a key piece to everything here. And then we're going to round out the deck with 3 of the BT13 Omnimon and 4 of the BT20 Omni X Antibody. BT13 Omni is still a really, really good win condition. I used to run him at a 2 of, and then I'm like, I miss him way too much. There are way too many times where I'm like, BT13 Omni just wins me the game. And I just didn't see him enough at a 2 of. At 3, I felt like I saw it enough to say, okay, I definitely can go for game, particularly when you think about it with cards like Gallant X Antibody as well. Like these cards, when you pair it with Purge, even Just GX when paired with Purge, just go ahead, do multiple checks. Now BT13 Omni only really needs like 2 or 3 Royal Knights in Yggdrasil stack to go for game, right? So it makes your BT13 Omni plays that much more effective with these new additional pieces. So I still think BT13 Omni for game is a really, really good strat. BT20 Omni X Antibody, I mean, there's so many words to describe this card. He's beautiful. He's sexy Frenchman. He's so strong, you know, like blocker, raid, piercing, being able to swing without suspending is really, really good. Him paired with Omeka over here, being able to give Royal Knights a defensive option that says, okay, even if you rush me down, I can still make a comeback play is really, really good. Being able to board wipe your opponent's board state, get rid of bodies, swing into things, and then also have options like Last Guardian available to you to say, look, like I've done my damage, I've done my thing, but I'm going to stay on board and just do some more damage is really, really good. I think the more I've play tested this deck, the less afraid I am of just being like, you know what? Play it for 6. Play it for 9. You know, I don't care. I'll play it, give you 5 memory, but I've gotten rid of your stack. I've gotten rid of your big boss monster. and I've got a big guy that can not only get rid of one body, raid into another body, right? Like really, really good, just big drop to say, I'm going to do some damage and deal with me, right? Because if they don't, even if you don't have a Last Guardian and you tuck it underneath sources, like I said earlier, right? You've got ways to play it out with Genku. You can purge it out as well. Yes, you don't get the on play, but you still get that aggressive raid piercing mechanic. So really, really good card for this deck. And I think definitely helps to take this deck to the next level. Without this card, Royal Knights is still really good, but just not quite there. And I think this definitely takes this up a whole notch. Honestly, any blue or red deck that can run this card, you just run it because it's such a good card. So definitely a key component to this deck for sure. And you guys think in the comment section down below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, if you guys have any tips, suggestions, recommendations, please do let me know. I'll do my best to respond on YouTube and in Discord. I know I've been slacking a little bit of late because of that. Life's just been busy. So sorry I haven't been responding to you guys in the comments. I do like doing it, so I'm going to try to be better about it. But yeah, do let me know. Again, shout out to all the fellows that have helped me shape this deck to what it is today. Definitely going to be tinkering around with it more and more as it's looking like this is what I'll be playing for competitive season in the near future. And I'm excited to see where this goes. And the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm like, the journey to max rarity is looking very painful. Because I will say, even at base rarity, this is probably one of the more expensive decks in the meta right now. Omnis, Omni X's, Medievals, if people are running a ton of them. It is a pricier deck, I will say for sure, but a really, really fun one. So if you have the ability to put this deck together, I highly, highly recommend it. It's very, very skill expressive. So as I said earlier, right, a lot of people have their own ways of running it, their own ways of building it. So I'm interested to see what you guys are cooking. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already, and hopefully we catch you on that next video. Bye-bye.